You're listening to Beyond the Bell, Leading with Purpose, a new conversation space where educators and leaders explore what it truly means to lead with purpose, courage, and heart. Join Dr. Nathan Manley and myself, Jim Cummins, as we share the inspiration behind Lifted and how purpose-driven leadership can transform schools and communities. This is Beyond the Bell, Leading with Purpose.
Welcome to Beyond the Bell, Leading with Purpose. I'm Nathan Manley, educator, consultant, and lifelong learner, here with my colleague, partner, and friend, Dr. Jim Cummins.
It's good to be here. We're excited to get this kicked off. I'm Jim Cummins, retired superintendent, and working with Dr. Manley and our efforts to just continue to support leaders across the state and country and leading their organizations.
So we decided to start this podcast. Couple different reasons. Any other reasons you'd highlight why we started this together?
Yeah, I think in our efforts to lead the school districts we were at, we found a need to just encourage and support the people we worked with. We know both of us have a desire and a passion for the well-being of staff and students, and so I think part of the reason is just to encourage and support leaders. Secondly, I think we can all learn, and by having different leaders on the podcast that are tackling issues that are relevant at the time, that listeners can learn from those perspectives and just learn about leadership in general. And then finally, I think it's important that we continue to highlight exceptional leaders and the great things that are going on in our schools. As schools continue to have scrutiny from the outside, I think part of our mission is to highlight the great things that are going on. What about you?
Well, I think that's very good. I think some of the same things. I think it's an opportunity to pour hope. I think that's so much of what leadership is about, is giving others that encouragement, letting them know that we're all in this together. I think it's great that we have had success in some different areas, but I think that success comes from a lot of failures, a lot of trials, and so if there's something we did that we're willing to take a chance on and we learned something and we can share that with somebody else because we're constantly in this cycle of improvement, and that has a positive impact on adults or children, then I think it's good to share.
Absolutely, and you don't have near as many grades as I do, but I often tell people those are earned, not given, and so we've had I've had my share of missteps, and hopefully through this we can maybe help some people avoid some of the missteps.
Well, maybe it was this. I think for both of us as well, having that partnership and what we hope to give others, certainly our faith isn't necessarily something that we shy away from, and using that as an anchor for us in the things that we've done in our career, and knowing that, like, obviously there's stress, there's trials, but there's a lot of good stuff out there, the opportunity to do that, and to know here are the things that really grounded us in that work.
Yeah, I know. I agree 100%. I think it's, we work in an industry, if you're listening, you're an educator, there's a line that can't be crossed, but as leaders, I think where we're grounded and what's important to us, what supports our well-being. If we're passionate about well-being, we have to understand the things that support personal well-being, and for us, a large part of that is our faith. And so I think listeners will experience that throughout our podcasts, and it's something that neither one of us shy away from, and I think it's important to our world, and it's also important to our work.
Yeah. So this first episode is going to be you and I. We're going to talk about why we're doing it, a little bit about us, what our mission, what our philosophy is, and then look ahead a little bit. From here on out, I think we'll probably have a lot of guests. But for today, Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, background, passion for education, leadership came from?
Yeah. So it kind of a unique, we talk about it all the time in education about students that start on third base in their life versus a student that has to start at home plate and overcome a lot of obstacles. I would say I was a young man that had at least a good sized lead off of second base. We weren't wealthy. We didn't have. We had everything we needed, but there weren't paths that were cleared out for us like some students. So I would say had a very good start. But I think what drove me was the fact that my mother had to work her way through college with 2 kids to become an educator, and it meant so much to her to be a teacher. So she taught. She was a high school English teacher, ultimately a high school principal, school board member, supervised student teachers. Education was her passion. She drove it into us, my sister and I. And what I saw in her was not only the hard work to become an educator, but when she was a building leader, the commitment that she had to her faculty. She was fiercely loyal and supportive of those people that worked with her at the high school. And so I learned that side. And then I had the fortune, or some would say misfortune, when I was in junior high and high school, I had to go to work with my dad every day. And Dad was a carpet installer. And what I learned was hard work, service to the customer, an absolute pride in your craftsmanship, that your craftsmanship, what you did was a reflection of who you were and what your standards were. And then just integrity from both of them, just honest to a fault. And so that background is what kind of served my foundation as far as leadership. But I told Mom when I was a senior in high school I wasn't going into education because I was going to get rich. And so I went to college, majored in finance, and ultimately was a CPA and had my own practice. Opportunity to be a volunteer assistant for the football team here in Neosho changed my career. Went back, took 48 hours to be able to teach business ed to high schoolers after I had a degree and a CPA certificate, but I did it. Went into the classroom 5 years later, had an opportunity to be a principal, then a superintendent, and just got the joy of serving students, districts. And so that's a little bit of my story, but I would just, the faith piece, I want to share a little bit of that. I had those foundational skills that Mom and Dad instilled in me and I'd seen from other leaders. But going on 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with leukemia, and it changed the perspective. When you don't know, what the end is, all of a sudden, you think about retirement, you think about the golden ages, and all of a sudden that shrinks down to, you don't know when that day might come.
Right.
And it changed the philosophy of what about the others? What am I doing today to make an impact on the lives of others? Not just leading the mission of the school district and where we want to be, but how am I pouring into the lives of others? And it really, it strengthened my faith, but it also made me reflect on what difference I'm making every day in my interactions with people. I know you've got a great story as well, so why don't you share?
Well, yeah, but don't go too fast. Did it, when you talk about it changing your perspective, did it also change the importance of the goals that you had in your interactions?
Oh, absolutely. I think what I quickly understood was that probably when it was all said and done, and the original diagnosis, if you look up CMML, is 18 to 24 months of life expectancy. Well, that gets your attention pretty quickly. So it wasn't that necessarily the goals and the priorities changed. I think what happened is I resequenced them a little bit. knowing that, we still had business to accomplish at school. I still had to show up on good days, bad days. I needed to show up and be there. I guess it just slowed things down for me. I quit looking at what is the fastest way to get to the mission we have, and how do I take each day and say, okay, we've got to get there, but part of what I'm here for is to bring joy to others, to help them in their day to be the best that it can be. And so the priorities probably just shifted around a little bit, and it made me really think about, is the difference I'm making building up individuals with the time that I have, or is it just solely about getting to the goal that we've set for the district?
Yeah. Well, I just think that's so powerful for anyone listening. Sometimes we talk about the 5-year rule, or we have a great friend, Dr. Trey Moeller, talks about the 6-month rule. And for you, that 18 to 24 month rule was real. And it's what are my behaviors today, and what do I want to make sure I accomplish? Yeah. And you had that real life piece. Hopefully others, they don't have that they have to deal with. But to understand, to live with intention of the behaviors, the actions of today have an impact 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 5 years from now.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of songs. I mean, the song "Live Like You're Dying," you don't want to think about it in that perspective, and I don't encourage anybody to go out and hope they have a disease. But I will tell you, it is a blessing in some ways, because you do the old saying, "Be where your feet are." You start thinking about that a little bit more, about not always just thinking about what 5, 10 years, 15 down the road, but where are my feet right this second, and how am I enjoying, reflecting, making a difference in that very moment. So
you're definitely not borrowing the worries of tomorrow.
I am not.
I'm still working on that.
You've got a powerful story also.
Well, get into a little bit. You and I both had humble backgrounds. I don't think I started on second base. As a first generation college grad in our family. I think the thing that I look back on as I get older, and one of the blessings I had was that my mom and dad saw education as a path to improve the family outcome. And one of the stories I talk about is my grandpa Jim, and he had cancer, and how he was, as he was living his last days, and making sure to my dad, if nothing else, like, make sure they get their education, because that was not a privilege that he had. He had worked from a very young age, and saw that as, and he was successful. I think he owned his own gas station, but also saw that if the family was going to, the more opportunities with education out there. And so, growing up in that, like I said, we didn't have a ton, but we were taken care of. Another story I talk about is, as my mom and dad were making those decisions about places to live, they found a home in a school district that they thought had a good school. We talk about it being a fixer-upper. And so often we have families that do that same thing, and we think about that fixer-upper and that humble beginning, and how that was someone's American dream. And so I get to live out some of that. My brother's in the same place as far as graduating, and then from college, and having his success and different family. And so I feel like we've kind of pulled through that, or certainly our children are doing some great things as well. But that led me to also, that's where I met my wife, and was taken in by a family of educators, and got introduced to education and different aspects of family, became a teacher in my hometown, and at the ripe age of 27 was given my first principal job, like it or not, which was quite a blessing. Um, Led me to some other positions of leadership, including central office with assistant superintendent jobs, whether it was with you or others. And so I've been blessed to have mentors and leaders throughout my life, because we talk about coming out of anything and that success. And so I've always been pretty driven, but I've also been blessed, whether it was teachers when I was young with Miss Klepper after my brother had passed away when he was in second grade, or high school teachers like Miss Hampton or Mr. Eust, and then getting into education, having teacher leaders and principals that were good mentors, but then getting into other leadership and seeing you and some of the others, and just being able to learn, being able to develop what leadership looks like, developing others, what real servant leadership looks like. And so I've been able to live that. I've been able to live that blessing, and that's brought us to here.
Yeah, you mentioned your wife, who I always thought it was a funny. You always talk about your wife has 2 associate degrees, hers and yours. But I know she was supportive of you through college and through the growth. But tell me a little bit about your family.
Yeah. So I have 4 boys that I raised, one in college, a senior, a sophomore, and a 6th grader. And so I raised 4 boys, and Jen still raises 5. I'm still a 5th grader. That was what I taught, which was about right, because that was probably my maturity level. So she still raises me and keeps me in line. You talked about the associate's degrees and being able to navigate that world and have her go through that. So she has carried me a great deal. She continues to carry. She carries the boys, but also a partnership in making sure that they're successful. So good boys.
One of the things I think will be important as you listen to our podcast is I always tried to make it a priority that employees understood that family was going to be there during their job, after their job. They needed to make sure that they took time to take care of their families, and I think that's one of the nice things about Nathan and I is just strong marriages, strong families. My wife's been an educator for ever since we got out of college, still serving part-time as an instructional coach. We have 3 daughters, all are educated teachers. 2 of them are homeschooling right now, their own children, and one of them is an athletic director in a area school. So education, I think the thing that I'm the most proud of that is that they would not have chosen education if they hadn't heard their mom and dad talking positively about the field of education, the impact that you can have. And so proud of them, and excited to see where our 5 little grandchildren grow up and become, and see if any of them become educators.
A quick note on that, because I completely agree. And I was able to be in these positions and still be a father and husband. Now, obviously, things come in. There are certainly long days, and there are some long months, and then, but being able to put that first. But what I would say is, you gave us permission, but you modeled that as well. And I think that's another one for leaders that are out there, and saying that is great. When you model it, it gives others permission.
I appreciate that.
The times where, obviously Katie played softball, or Bailey danced, and you got your work done, but you were gonna go and make sure you saw those things as well. If you hadn't have done that, I think it would have been one of those things like, well, Does he mean it? And so our actions versus what we say, people are always going to be looking. Do those things match up?
They're always watching.
Yeah.
I would imagine that might be a future podcast.
Yeah, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk?
So let's talk for a moment about what the audience can expect out of future podcasts. I've got some thoughts down here about the audience. Do you have thoughts about what they can expect? And
yeah, I think we want to tell stories of schools and leaders out there that are doing the right work, that are having success, but that also have probably had some hiccups and roadblocks along the way, to give others encouragement that, like, oh, I can take chances and prepare for those things that come along the way, those speed bumps. But I can also gather stories that, like, well, here's what best practices look like, and to give practical strategies and tips to solve problems that are out there. Everybody has a pain point. Right now we talk about teacher retention a lot, or we talk about student behavior and some of those different things, and assessment data, and real world learning. And can we give strategies? Can we tell stories? Can we give hope? And can we tie our faith and anchor that as well? Because I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think with leadership, we talk about servant leadership, and we talk about our example. As leaders, we have, if we don't have the mindset that we're willing to wash somebody else's feet, then that's probably a good reflection. And I think for us, our faith made us better leaders. And so I think that's a little bit, if we can carry those. What about you?
Yeah, I think, anyone that wants to learn, wants to be uplifted, just grow in their daily impact on people, I think will have an opportunity to experience those things. I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of leaders. First, in my world as a CPA, I worked with corporate leaders when I was doing auditing. I worked with small business owners when I was doing tax. As I went through the superintendency, I got to work with civic leaders and supporters. And so I've seen leadership at a lot of different levels and organizations. And I think what this podcast, although we're educators and we certainly, most of our guests will probably be education leaders, I think civic, corporate, small business, nonprofit, all of those leaders have a chance to glean from the conversations that we're going to have. Because honestly, the challenges are the same. We face personnel challenges. We face government regulatory challenges, clients or shareholder challenges, logistics. It could go on and on. So the goals and the labels on things might be different, but leadership is leadership. And are you willing to do the things to continue to grow, to learn how best to pour into your people? And so I think they're going to gain practical takeaways. I mean, our hope is that each visitor, we tackle at least one question along with just general leadership. So I think they'll have practical takeaways. And certainly our goal is, as we talk about how do we be well as individuals, I think also the goal is how do you make well organizations? How do you make sure your organization is well, that it functions highly, but it's also mentally, emotionally well as you try to accomplish your goals. So I'm excited to kick this off. I think we've got opportunities. We've got exciting guests that I think we're going to try to get on here and provide those opportunities for listeners to learn from.
I'm going to piggyback on what you had said with the well-being, because that's so important right now. We have, amongst the problems, whether it's teachers or leaders, and we have so much burnout. And some of the conversations that we used to have is we certainly wanted a place that people could come work and be happy. And yet that wasn't necessarily the bar that we shot for. It was looking and creating an organization where people lived in joy, where it filled their cup, where if we could make it, whether we got there with everybody or not, or every building, or even in the district, the goal was if we could create a place where they could come and they had purpose and it filled their cup and made them a better mom, made them a better wife, made him a better husband, made him all of those things. That was the responsibility that we thought we had, and I think that's part of that responsibility for leadership as well. It's creating a place that fills others' cups so they can go be the best, not to live to work, but having those things align and telling those stories and everything that goes into that.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think we think about the immediate sometimes, and that becomes transactional leadership. But you don't, if you think about how many employees stay at one place these days. So you may have them for 2 or 3 years, and then they're going to go on to some other place and possibly work. But they're always going to be somebody's mother or father. They're always going to be somebody's spouse. So what difference did you make in the 2 or 3 years that you had them, not only as an educator, as an employee, but as somebody that eventually will be outside of your care, but will still have the potential to carry on what you poured into them. So you're spot on, and I hope that that's the message that comes through over our series of podcasts.
Let's talk a little bit about what we both believe about leadership. I think we'd call ourselves servant leaders. What does that mean to you?
Well, 100%. I think I was introduced to that concept in college and then got to experience in action in my brief time as vice president of finance at Crowder. But to me, leadership is an unwavering commitment to a vision. So that's got to drive your decision making. It's got to drive, what is important. How do you spend your resources? How do you hire people? How do you do all of that? But I think as a leader, you have to be willing to lead, which takes courage, because somebody has to make a decision. Somebody has to be the ultimate, this is what we're doing. But I think you also have to be willing to follow and have collaboration and hire people that are smarter than you, that have complementary skills, that so you're not just it's not just you trying to find the people that will say yes and support your ideas, but it's a collaborative issue. So the team feels good about the vision, what it is that you're moving towards. And then I have trouble talking about leadership without mentioning the book Way of the Shepherd.
Tell us about that.
I used it in all of my grad classes when I was teaching grad classes. It's just a silly little story about this fellow that's getting promoted in his work, and goes to this gentleman, and the gentleman uses sheep to explain leadership, and they talk about shape, knowing the shape of your flock, and that is strengths, heart, attitude, personality, and experiences. So knowing those things about your people, understanding, and so to me, servant leadership is how do I serve the vision, number one. And if that service means I have to have a tough conversation with a person so that they can be their best self as we work towards that mission and their own personal mission, which is to be the best father, wife. So it's not necessarily just always doing, but it's helping others to be their best, and whatever it takes to help move towards the vision is what the role should be of the leader. So if that means jumping in and mopping the floor because it needs to be mopped, rather than calling somebody that's 2 miles away to come mop the floor. What is it that needs to be done at that very moment to help move the vision, to help the people under your care to be the best they can be?
That's good.
I know you're probably, I share this with people all the time. I think I know you're the best developer of principal talent that I've ever been around. So talk a little bit about that leadership and how you develop that talent.
Well, I appreciate that. I think something when we talk about leaders, and a point of clarification for us is there are leaders by title, but for us, it really wasn't about, like, everybody has the ability to be a leader, and that just like teaching is a craft, leadership is a craft. Mm-hmm. I was not a natural born leader. Those were a responsibility that every leader has, is to learn along the way, to learn and to reflect. And so knowing that craft was always going to be worked on, but giving anyone an opportunity to be poured into as well. When you talk about principles and that, there's a real passion for, again, just getting into a place where we understand who we are, why we make decisions, what makes us click, what's important to us, and then how do we pour that into others, and not by giving them the answer. Again, we go back. We can either, when we talk about servant leadership, one of the things that happens is we think that servant leadership means we just give things and do things for people. And there are times where we have to do that. But when we think about, like, what are we really shooting for, is it's not giving the man the fish, it's teaching them how to fish. And there are some people that we have to give fish to sometimes, that continuum. But our ultimate goal is starting with, what are the skills that person needs to have so they can do this the rest of their life? And I think when you do that, and we leverage the science and the brain and psychological safety and everything that goes with that, we produce confidence in leaders as well, and giving them practical skills to get past some of our educational jargon, for lack of better words. And so it's just it's fun because it's not about developing. It's so much just about developing the people and the relationship, and like you said, being able to have the conversation that they need to have, knowing that it's what's best because you care enough about that person to be intentional about the good things they do and to pour into that, and then intentional about giving them feedback on. And I was blessed that I was always able to learn from all of them as well, that so many that would challenge and take that on and make a better leader as well.
Well, I think listeners are getting a taste of what we hope to talk about over the course of these podcasts, and really bringing in other perspectives of leaders that have been successful, that have led change, that are tackling the current challenges that are facing school leaders and leaders across our country. So looking forward to further podcasts.
Yep.
And hope that you'll like, subscribe, join with us as we bring these to you on a periodic basis.
And share with others. And what's a problem out there you'd like to see discussed, to bring light to, and to see what we can bring about that, or suggest other stories and schools that light needs to be shined on.
Absolutely. You can get to our information at liftededu.com to share, to reach out to us. You can find our information there, and we will see you on the next episode of Beyond the Bell, Leading with Purpose.
All right. Thank you.